How's everybody doing? My name is Jonathan Atchley, and this is discussion number 2 for modern American literature. So the first question was, what is literary naturalism? So my definition for that would be everyone and everything around you makes you who you are, such as your family, your friends, the environment, your family structure, the people you hang out with. And I think that's probably the biggest one. The people you hang out with really shape who you are, and then your whole environment, which that ties in everything. So in literature, you see it when the author makes connections from the characters and how the environment affects him or her. So I picked, the writing that I picked is Jack London's To Build a Fire. So a little quick overview about, To Build a Fire. So it's about an unnamed man who's traveling through the Yukon Trail, which is in Canada, if you didn't know that, with his dog. He's going to visit his friends. And he was told before he made this journey that this trip's very dangerous. You shouldn't do it. Don't do it because of, extreme low temperatures. But he didn't listen. He thought he could do it. So he begins to slowly die of hypothermia. He gets a fire going, but he has to leave it to continue his trip. He ends up trying to build another fire. It doesn't work. He ends up thinking about killing his dog, to try to get the body temperature and the warm blood. Doesn't do that. And basically he ends up dying. So, moral of the story, if an old wise man tells you not to do something, you probably shouldn't do it. But he did it anyway. So a little foreshadowing quote that I picked says, "It was 9 o'clock in the morning. There was no sun or promise of sun, although there was not a cloud in the sky. It was a clear day. However, there seemed to be an indescribable darkness over the face of things. That was because the sun was absent from the sky. This fact did not worry the man. He was not alarmed by the lack of sun. It had been days since he had even seen the sun." And that's located London 64 in the eLearn link that he sent us. I kind of think this kind of shows he was a little cocky. He thought it wasn't going to be a big deal, but it obviously was. He ends up dying. So, he really wasn't worried about that to begin with, but he probably should have been. And then another quote, real quick, says, "But all this, the distant trail, no sun in the sky, the great cold, and the strangeness of it all had no effect on the man. It was not because he was long familiar with it. He was a newcomer to the land, and this was his first winter." And that's going to be London 65. So basically, he didn't know the land, all right, but he was obviously conditioned to believe that he could make it with no problem. So this was obviously false. Number 3, this is probably the easiest question for me. How did the setting of the work challenge the protagonist? Well, it was freezing. It was freezing cold, and he was all alone on a long trip. So I think that would be, a pretty big problem and challenge anybody. So the protagonist was the unnamed man making the trip. And some themes that tie into this was the theme of heredity and environment as they affect and afflict individual lives. And, the environment was what ended up killing him. And then, obviously, another big theme in this, survival, determinism, violence. They were, key themes. It was a survival story. He had to survive. And, there's a little violence in it, too. So I think, and Jack London seems to not really care about what he's saying in his writings. So I think if he was still writing today, I feel like he'd be very straightforward, especially in light of all that's going on in the world. I think he'd be very straightforward and really try to attack things at their point. So that's all I got for you. Thank you for watching.